Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report, we're going to be taking a look at yet another really cool firearm from Q. And the gun that we will be shooting, reviewing, and talking about is the Q Boombox, chambered in 8.6 Blackout. You really got to hand it to Q for their naming conventions. Now this is, as I mentioned, a really interesting firearm, but I worry, like some of the other guns from this company I have reviewed, that it suffers from an identity crisis, because I'm not really sure what it's supposed to do. When this gun started out, it's my understanding it was supposed to be an evolution of a submachine gun, but obviously now it's chambered in 8.6, so it deviated from that mission. But some people claim that this is the modern evolution of the AR-10 and the battle rifle. I've seen other reviewers say this is the ultimate PDW. You have two very different types of firearms there. Some people say it's just a great modern sporting rifle, like an AR-15, and others say this is a great gun for hunting, and more specifically, hunting hogs. So how can one gun fit all these roles? I have no idea, so I'm really excited to get this gun to the range and find out. We also have to talk about 8.6 Blackout. But before we get this gun to the range and talk about all of its specs, there's a few people I want to give a huge shout out to. First and foremost is the owner of this really cool rifle. He's a local fan and subscriber named D, and you've heard me talk about him in many other videos, and he has an amazing collection. So I want to thank him for not only donating his time, but also filling out the paperwork, allowing me to borrow this firearm and two suppressors for this review. So D, thank you once again for all you do for the Texas Gun Vault community. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not do this without them. And if you want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there's a link in the description below, and you get to see all of these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor, who provides much of the ammunition for these range reports and makes them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And yes, once again, it's that time in my video where I get to talk about what I think is the greatest grip company in the world, Brownworks. I'm always talking about how amazing these grips are, how Mark is an artist and a craftsman. If you own a Colt 1911, a Beretta 92, a CZ75, or a Browning High Power, just to name a few, and you've been looking to customize your pistols, the grip company you need to check out is Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark is an artist and a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures. He can finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He can even apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin to these grips to make them unique and one of a kind. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. So I'm going to ask you to go over there and check out everything he has to offer. And when you place your first order for a set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. Alright, so we got a lot in this video to unpack and talk about. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera. Let's talk about the Q Boombox and the 8.6 Blackout. So before we talk more about the Q Boombox, I think we should take a moment and discuss the 8.6 Blackout and what it is. When I first heard about this caliber, I kind of felt like it was a solution in search of a problem. Its designed purpose is to propel heavy projectiles at subsonic velocities at 1 MOA accuracy out to 300 yards. And if that's what this can do, that's pretty darn impressive. It was designed by Kevin Brittingham and Q. It is a shortened 6.5 Creedmoor case necked up to accept an 8.6 millimeter projectile. They claim it hits twice as hard and has twice the reach and energy as 300 Blackout, and it fits in standard 308 magazines. And the reason I wanted to give you the specs on this caliber is because if you're not familiar with it, well, the whole purpose of the Q Boombox is to have a modern sporting rifle or an AR rifle chambered in this caliber. So this is definitely an expensive round, but it might be worth it. After all, as I mentioned in the opening of this video, they say this gun can do a lot and fill a lot of roles. And if it's going to do that, it has to have a great cartridge. So that is the 8.6 Blackout and what they claim it can do. So now let's talk about the Q Boombox. So let's talk about the specs of the Q Boombox. Obviously, this is an AR pattern rifle. It is direct impingement. It has a piston-length gas system with an adjustable gas block. The barrel is 12 inches long. It is made of 416R stainless steel. The twist rate is 1/3, so it's a very, very fast twist rate. It comes with an XL cherry bomb installed, but if you take that off, the threads are M18 by 1.5. It accepts SR25 magazines. It has standard AR controls that are ambidextrous. It has a Reptilia CQG-NB grip. It also has a 2-position boombox stock. And I know some people are going to say that's the same stock that they have on the Honey Badger, but actually it's not. This one is a little bit larger and a little bit longer. The receivers are made of 70-75 aluminum. It is clear hard coat anodized. Its overall length is 26.75 inches with the stock collapsed, and with the stock extended, it is 31.25 inches in length. It has a width of 1.5 inches. Its height is 7.5 inches. It's a very light firearm at only 5 pounds, 8 ounces. And according to Q's website, it has, quote, literally the best trigger ever made. So we're going to have to test that out. They claim the pull weight is 3.25 pounds to 3.75 pounds. So that's the next thing I want to check out. So I'm going to get out the Lyman Trigger pull weight gauge and see if they're telling us the truth about that. So let me get that gauge out now. So as I mentioned, Q claims this has literally the best trigger ever made. So let's go ahead and see if that's the case. Let's drop the magazine, ensure there is no ammunition in it. And of course, turn the gun over, visually inspect the chamber, make sure there is no ammunition in the firearm either. It looks like we are safe. So before we measure the trigger, let's go ahead and take a look at the trigger pull. That take up, very short, very smooth, and very light. You come back to a very definitive wall, and that breaks very crisp and very light. Let's take a look at this reset. That's it. The reset is not very tactile or audible, but it is very short, and you are right back at that wall. That is pretty darn amazing. Maybe their claim is absolutely true. Yeah, that feels great. All right, so now let's go ahead and get out the trigger gauge. Let's clear any averages, and let's test this out. For our first pull, we have 3 pounds, 6.0 ounces. Three pounds, 3.3 ounces. Three pounds, 4.8 ounces. Three pounds, 3.9 ounces. And finally, we have 3 pounds, 4.6 ounces, which gives us an average of 3 pounds, 4.5 ounces. So absolutely, their claim is true. That is honestly a really nice trigger. Is it the best ever made? I don't know. I haven't shot them all. But that one is pretty darn sweet. So I'm now really excited to get this thing to the range and see how it performs. So let me go ahead and readjust the camera. I'll talk about what I like and don't like about this gun. And then finally, we're going to put some rounds through it. And so before I get to take this really cool and interesting firearm to the range, as always, I want to share with you my thoughts on the things that I like and don't like. And I always want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun is the company that made it. I love Q's passion, innovation, and philosophy. They make guns with cool names like the Boombox, the Honey Badger, the Mini Fix. They desire to make some of the most interesting and well-built guns on the market. And I definitely think they do that. They think outside the box. They're creating things that nobody else is. And I feel like many other gun companies need to follow that path. And they're leading the way. So it makes me want to support them even more. And I know that I'm passionate about guns, and you're probably passionate about guns, but it's obvious they're passionate about guns. So we're all in this together. Q does seem to be a really cool company. I also love the fact that this is a modernization of the AR-10 platform. I know over the last decade, the AR-10 has gotten a lot more attention and love than it has in the past. But when it comes to AR-10s, many times they're big, they're bulky. This one is small and light, and hopefully is chambered in a very capable cartridge. I also love the aesthetics of Q firearms. They have that clear anodization, so it gives them that really cool look. This bronzish or yellowish look with the gray accents, I think is really cool looking. It's just not your standard black rifle. And when it comes to their receiver design, I love the fact it has standard controls, but they're ambidextrous. But now let's talk about a couple things about this gun that I don't like. And as I've handled it here on the workbench, I can tell you I'm not a big fan of this stock. Even though it's supposed to be bigger and longer than the one on the Honey Badger, it's still too short for me. I feel like the length of pull is just not long enough. I am 6 foot tall, and I kind of feel like this has the firearm too close to my face. I wish it was just a little bit longer. I understand that they want to keep it in a very compact package, but if you could extend it just a little bit more, I think it'd be a little bit more comfortable for me. I also am not a fan of how this gun comes apart. I'm not going to do it in this video, but it comes apart very similar to that of the Honey Badger. So you just don't take the takedown pin in the back and swing the upper open. No, you have to take off both pins and kind of lift it up and then pull it off. And that has to do because this buffer system is different than a standard AR-15 or AR-10. So if you're not really a gun guy or gun gal, it might be a little bit difficult and a little bit confusing at first. And the last thing I don't like about this gun is the price of the ammunition. This gun is mated with the 8.6 Blackout. And even if it is the greatest caliber ever created, it's very, very expensive. Now, of course, this is also an expensive gun, so I'm assuming if you can afford it, you can afford the ammunition. But from the perspective of an average gun guy, when the rounds cost so much, it means you're not going to be able to enjoy this firearm as much as you might like. So that's the things that I like and don't like. So now it's time to get this thing to the range. So the first battery of tests I'm going to do is to kind of treat it like a defensive carbine. Some people say it's a PDW. So we're going to go to the range and we're only going to shoot 8.6 Blackout subsonic ammunition. So we're going to start off with the gun being unsuppressed. And luckily, the owner of this firearm has also lent to the channel the two 8.6 Blackout suppressors made by Q, the short chop and the pork chop. So we will start unsuppressed, we'll go to the short chop, go to the pork chop, see if it changes anything about the gun, how those suppressors sound, and then we'll decide the next test we're going to do. So let's just go to the range and see how this thing shoots. And so the first thing I notice about this gun is that it shoots really, really well. And for being such a powerful caliber, it has a very light recoil. This trigger is also pretty darn awesome. So when it comes to the performance of the gun, I had no issues unsuppressed or suppressed. But what surprised me is the suppressor that kind of worked the best and had the best sound was the short chop. I was expecting the pork chop to have that because you have more baffles and more internal volume. But this, on this shorter firearm, just seems to be the best match. So all of the later tests in this range report are going to be with this suppressor. So now we know the gun is operating good, and by the way, it definitely is flinging that brass out of this ejection port really fast and really hard. And no matter where I put the camera, that brass kept hitting it. So I'm sorry, you're gonna have to see that camera get hit with those spent shells throughout this range report. I could not place this camera anywhere where these cases would miss it. So you gotta put up with that, and I apologize in advance. So now let's go back to the range. Let's double the distance of this target. Let's shoot this a little bit faster and see if there's anything else about it that we discover that I like or don't like, and I'll report back to you. And once again, you can see my camera that I use at the range is getting pelted by these ejecting cases, and there's nothing I can do, but those cases are definitely flying out of this gun, so I'm not going to have to worry about any malfunctions with this thing. This rifle is definitely a more expensive and bigger version of 300 Blackout, but surprisingly, it is very well balanced, especially with the short chop on it. It's not cumbersome. So if you're getting that type of ballistic performance out of this gun in a rifle that's very light, that's soft shooting, I definitely think as a defensive carbine, this thing is honestly kind of winning me over. The only thing that I'm discovering that I don't like about it is not only is the stock a little bit too short, the rear portion of this stock has a guard on it, and it kind of gets pinched in my cheek. And so under recoil, just where I have to put my head, it's not very comfortable. I wish this guard or this shield was a little bit longer, and the stock was also a little bit longer. Just a couple times, it pinched me right here. So now I want to test the accuracy of this rifle out. So we're going to move over to the 100-yard range, but we're going to start at 25 yards. And yes, 8.6 Blackout can go way further than this, but I'm going to change optics. So I just want to start at this distance, see what the best group I can get with it is when I'm bench resting, and then we'll go from there. So let's test this gun's accuracy. And obviously this rifle is going to be very accurate. The other 8.6 Blackout rifles I have shot in the past really had a group that opened up at about 100 yards. So as we go out to further distances, hopefully that's not going to happen on this gun. I personally don't think that 8.6 is that accurate for me. Now, I'm not saying that other people can't shoot it that well, but when it comes to guns that are chambered in 5.56, 308, or 6.5, I just don't have these issues. Maybe it's me and 8.6, but we'll just have to find out. So now let's double the distance of the target, go out to 50 yards, and hopefully these groups and this accuracy will continue. And once again, I'm getting a pretty good group. I just have to work on zeroing the scope, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of ammunition. As I mentioned, it's really, really expensive. So I'm going to care more about the group size in these tests than getting it right on the bullseye. But as I said, pretty good group, and so far, very consistent. So now let's go out to 75 yards and see if anything changes. And I personally am pretty happy with that. Remember, I'm just an average gun guy, and I mainly shoot handguns and subguns. Longer distance shooting just isn't my thing. But for me, I'm very happy with how this gun is shooting. I'm not going to complain about that group. I can definitely see that this would be a great gun for hunting. I'm already convinced it's a great gun for CQB, especially if you want to go with supersonic loads in the gun, you're going to get even better performance. But if you want to be very quiet, these subsonic rounds are excellent. You have a lot of versatility in this package. But as I mentioned, I could see this as a hunting gun. This is probably something great to put on the back of your all-terrain vehicle if you're out hunting hogs. It's small, light, nimble, but obviously it's going to be very accurate and produce lethality at good distances. All right, so the last thing I want to do is set the target out at 100 yards and see what the best group I can get with it is at this distance. So let's go back to the range. And yes, this group did open up a little bit, and a little bit more than I really wanted it to. I will say, the one low shot was totally me, and I knew when I shot it, it was going to do that. So that was not the gun or the ammunition, it was the operator. But I do know that some people in the comments section are probably going to make the snarky comment, "You need to go get more training." Well, these results mirror the other 8.6 firearms I have shot. And I recommend that you go and look at me shoot 100 yards with a 5.56, 308, or 6.5, and you'll see I can actually get really tight groups. Sometimes it's the mating of the operator and the gun, and I just cannot seem to shoot 8.6 that well at this distance. So when they say sub 1 MOA groups at 300 yards, I'm probably not going to be able to achieve that personally. But I don't think it has anything to do with training. Honestly, it's just the firearm and how it fits my body and my style of shooting. But overall, I can tell this gun is very accurate. And probably if I had access to a lot more ammunition and I was able to train with it more, not training from an instructor, but actually just get used to the gun, I could definitely tighten up that group. So overall, I'm very impressed with this gun, both in the capacity as a defensive carbine and as a hunting rifle. You could do some damage on some hogs and probably some deer at good distances with this gun, and also be very quiet with it. So what are my final thoughts on the Q Boombox? Well, this rifle did not disappoint. It's definitely a great AR-10 style gun. Is it a PDW? I actually think it is. Is it a hunting gun? Yes. Is it a modern sporting rifle? Yes. Could you use it as a battle rifle? Absolutely. I thought in the beginning of this video it was going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, but this gun won me over. It seems to do it all and do it very well with great accuracy. The only thing about this gun that I don't like is that stock. I wish it was a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, and I wish it didn't pinch my cheek. So on my star system, how would I rate the Q Boombox in 8.6 Blackout? Well, I'm going to give it 4.75 stars. And that means it almost got a perfect review. The only thing I didn't like about it was that stock. It just made it shooting a little bit uncomfortable. But besides that, the performance of this firearm was off the chart. So this is definitely a winner. I just wish the ammunition was a little bit cheaper. So what do you guys think about the Q Boombox? And what do you think about 8.6 Blackout? Is this the gun for you? Is it the caliber for you? Tell me in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.